Is this the bill that has the film production tax credits in it?
Say that again.
Is this the bill that has the film production tax credits?
No, no, no. This is had nothing to do with that. No, you mean this bill or what we just finished talking about? I'm sorry.
This one. The commercial production tax credits.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's in there. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the bill. That part of the bill we were just talking about. Yes, we have that.
And how much is the credit?
This one is the commercial. I have it here. Oh, this changes the requirements for those who are getting commercial product credit for TV commercials. They're getting the credit now, but we're putting in there a way in which they can get the money. They can't just do it.
And do we have?
We have to reach some form of answer to a request.
And do we have a goal for the number of jobs it will produce?
No, this is about what is already happening, and we're just changing the manner in how they do the payment and how they do the cutting of the taxes.
Okay.
But this commercial was in place last year.
And this provision extends the credit to software makers for software that goes in video games?
No, that's only, and then this one only deals with the commercials, the TV commercials. Yeah, we have another. Do we have? Is that in here? Yeah, give it to me. Yes, we do have it. I'll get you in a minute.
Okay. Because I have some concerns about the video game provision.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do have here amends the Excelsior job programs to include entertainment companies, video game developers, and music productions. This is pertaining to people who give jobs to children, give jobs to people. They get they get a credit on that.
And do you remember the Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling beat the Yankees in 2004 with the bloody sock?
I was there. Yeah.
Good for you. There's a bad memory for me.
I'm still crying.
Well, when he retired from baseball and breaking Yankees' hearts, he started a video game company.
Yeah.
And he wanted to start it in Massachusetts, where he was the great hero that ended the curse of the Bambino. And the governor at the time, Deval Patrick, a Democrat, said, you know what, we just can't make the numbers work on this tax credit. So Mr. Schilling brought his video game company idea to Rhode Island. And the taxpayers of Rhode Island backed his product and backed his company to the tune of $75 million, and he went bankrupt. And the Rhode Island taxpayers are on the hook. So my question is, I know this came through with a message of necessity, so there hasn't been that much time to
we haven't had a message on this
review
one.
It.
This one was written on, one was done on Friday.
But has there been a cost-benefit analysis to see if the bang for our taxpayer buck will be realized?
Actually, no, we haven't done a specific study. We've just been looking at the things that occur with the movies and everything else, and it seems to work. And the problem we have is if you don't do it, then they'll end up in Ontario. I mean, there's a game everybody plays with these credits. Will they go and then they say, well, so-and-so will give me this. What would you give me for me to stay? And, so everybody is fighting to keep these companies. I really am not going to go more than that because I'd get in trouble with what I think.
Right. It's rare that a cost-benefit analysis gets done, but 2 years ago, our former comptroller, Carl McCall, headed up a commission to study the tax code. And the commission was put in place by the governor. And do you know what their finding was with regard to some of these glamorous industry tax credits, like Hollywood? They said we should roll it back. We should, at a minimum, reduce it by $50 million because in the instance of Hollywood, only 1% of the jobs, less than 1% of the jobs in this state are in the film production industry, However, 30% of the business tax credits go to that. So the one cost-benefit analysis that we have, which is the basis for this expansion into music and software for video games, says this is a loser. And we have the anecdote from our friend Kurt Schilling in Rhode Island. So my question is, with no job projection numbers, why do we think this is going to be any different than the Hollywood tax credit, which we know is a dog?
Well, Carl McCall is a very good friend of mine, and I'm going to go beat him up for saying things like that.
I don't want to cause any problems between old friends.
No, but yes, at this point, we still think it's working, and it does do something, so we're going to continue to do it because we know you will lose jobs if you don't do it. That's the problem.
And do you know what state in the 50 states leads the nation in these kinds of what I would call corporate welfare programs?
I hope it's New York.
It is New York.
All right, we've done our job.
We spend 5 times more than any other state. And yet when you look at the business friendliness indexes, and there are many, we're usually 49th or 50th.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, though those numbers may be as they are, they could be worse. You know, your assumption is if we stop doing it, it'll get better. I'm saying it might get worse. So we prefer to continue to do it. Maybe we'll start studying it, or maybe they'll stop doing it in the next couple of years because we still have a few of these coming up, credits that are coming up in the future years that we're going to have to pay for.
And when I go back to my district and I go to get a sandwich at the deli, and the deli man asks me, hey, is there anything in that bill for me? I've been in business in New York for 30 years paying taxes. Is there anything for the deli owner? We know Hollywood's getting theirs. We know software for video games and music is getting theirs. How about the deli owner?
You and I will have a private talk later. There is a belief that the work that would occur, the people who are working on the jobs, and we have a lot of places in Brooklyn, you have a lot of movie places. I thought you were going to point out, I have people very angry at this program because every time you look for a parking space in my neighborhood, and we have a graveyard.
Ms. Markey, why do you rise?
Thank you. Just to answer your question, I live in Queens, and we do have a lot of movie production in the borough, and especially in my community. And to answer your question about do the delis in the community profit from that, the answer is yes, because they have canteens where they go to the local deli and ask them to make the sandwiches and the salads, et cetera, et cetera. It is a major generating, revenue-generating piece, at least for the borough of Queens, if not for the entire city.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the ripple effect, I guess, of this tax credit. Mr. Chairman, do you know in the last quarter of last year, the only time period for which we have statistics because it was a fight over the Freedom of Information law with Gannett newspaper, do you know what the average person who got a job from the Hollywood tax credit made in that 3-month period?
No.
$4,000, which works out to about $300 a week, which is not far from the minimum wage. So what we did, at least in that 3 months worth of time that we actually have statistics for, we subsidized Hollywood so they could pay minimum wages. And sometimes, if you can believe this, when the governor counts job creation totals, he counts as one job the person who made the sandwich, or an extra. He did this in the case of Spider-Man up in Rochester. An extra who gets a few $100s to be on the set for a few days as a job. Do you think these are the kinds of jobs that can support a middle-class family here in New York?
No, but there are lots of other jobs. You're picking out a certain amount. You probably find the people you're talking about is the guy we all dislike, and that's the one that runs around blocking the parking off in my neighborhood. We're always parking cars there. And so that is the person who's probably getting that $300 a day.
I live in Hopewell Junction. You can park anywhere you want. There's not a problem.
True. Well, we don't have that problem in my neighborhood. We have you can't park. So there are lots of money being made. And also, when you got the movie stars in New York, I talked earlier about how New York is one of the greatest places for people to come and visit. The fact that you can walk down the street and run into a movie star in New York City, whether it be Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan, you can do it, and you're going to see. So it makes people come here. It's like the Yankees. We built a stadium for Yankee Stadium because that draws a large amount of people into that stadium who come in. They don't fly in from Jersey. They park and then stay in New York. They travel from all over to come here. So this is also part of what we do in New York State, whether it be Niagara Falls or New York, to make money and do it through people coming in. And I guess if you pick out a certain position, pick out a certain type of work, you might get a low figure. But when you total it all with the guys on the camera...
Mr. Dendecker, why do you rise?
Will the gentleman yield for a moment?
Mr. Lalor, will you yield?
Yes.
Mr. Lalor yields.
I don't
As
yield.
probably the only member of the legislature who's a member of the Screen Actors Guild, first of all, let me just give you a little small education here. This is not a film tax credit per se in the word of a credit. Actually, it's a rebate. So the movie production company has to first come here and spend the money. It first has to hire all the workers and has to spend all the money in New York on items that we have listed that they're going to spend the money on. After they spend that money, the state will receive money from the sales tax on the purchases. It will receive money on the taxes of all the payroll that's paid out. The state actually makes $3 for every dollar that you give back in a rebate. So we earn the money first before we give the money back. This is a very competitive business. If you don't want to give a credit in order to create those jobs and get that income, you don't have to. There's another state right now in New Orleans that is paying 5% higher of a rebate, and hence if you look at TV today, you'll see many, many shows are now being filmed in New Orleans because they go where the money is, where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. But no matter what, they're going to have to create and pay thousands of people to do a TV show or a movie. So our choice is simple. We can allow them to come here, spend hundreds of millions of dollars, create thousands of jobs, or we could choose not to. But either way, they have to spend the money first, hire people first, and buy the products first. I just want to make sure that some of the members understand that. This is not like we give them money and say, hey, go make a movie. They have to make it first.
We are creating jobs, and as I pointed out, they are minimum wage jobs. So the choice of subsidizing Hollywood and losing the jobs is a false choice.
Mr. Dendecker, why do you rise?
Will the sponsor, will the gentleman
Will you yield?
1 second. That is a
1
false
second.
choice.
He will not yield.
Because the choice between subsidizing Hollywood and not subsidizing Hollywood is not the choice. Tax cuts for Hollywood is one option. Tax cuts for small businesses is another option. Tax cuts for manufacturers is another option. If the tax credit for manufacturers was equivalent to the tax credit for Hollywood, it would be 40% of the tax levy on our manufacturers. And the manufacturers produce jobs that are permanent, that have benefits, that you can raise a middle-class family. Now, I will yield if the gentleman still wants me to yield.
Ms. Warner, why do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will Mr. Lalor yield?
Absolutely.
Mr. Lalor yields.
So, as a representative of the software industry, I would just like to point out to you that the state of Rhode Island very unwisely issued $75 million worth of bonds to invest in Mr. Schilling's company, which then went belly up. This is not what we are proposing to do.
We're proposing to give $50 million a year on top of $420 million a year. It's actually worse.
As a tax credit, so they have to earn some money first, and then once they have earned some money and owe some taxes, they get the tax credit. So having earned some money, they've created some jobs. And by the way, these are the kinds of small software companies that are going to employ young people who are at RIT or RPI or SUNY Albany. These are the kinds of small businesses that we want to attract here. Software companies are the next form of manufacturing, and those are exactly the kinds of companies we want to attract to New York State. And I think a tax credit to attract small software gaming companies is exactly what we need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Lalor, back to you.
I think Mr. Dendecker wanted a shot.
Mr. Dendecker, why do you rise?
Just wanted to finish off that statement on the minimum wage jobs. I think what you did is you looked at the amount of money that someone made and divided it by a certain number of hours to come up with that. That would be the wrong way of doing it, because when you're filming a movie, you might only work on a movie 2 days or 3 days. And during that day, you might make $30 or $40 per hour. So it's not that you worked 5 days straight or 6 days straight. Well, it depends what role you had in that movie, whether you're a grip.
Jobs?
Pardon?
1 minute, 1 minute. Mr. Lalor, your generosity has cost you your time.
All right.